Welcome to the Clearlywell Podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKinn, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Hey guys, Elizabeth McKinn here with the Clearlywell Podcast. We're here today for episode 2 of John Malley. So if you didn't hear episode 1, you're going to want to go back and hear the really absolutely impelling story of John Malley's youth and how he got to the point he's at today. So I won't go any more into that. So just go back and listen to episode 1 and then welcome John to the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to pick up where we left off last episode. You were kind of really in a pickle. You had just had an IV usage overdose of fentanyl and then had a blackout episode, ended up in jail. You were beaten half to death. It was just crazy 48 hours for you. And that's where we left off in episode 1.
Yeah, so basically I woke up in jail facing a bunch of charges, not even knowing how I ended up in that situation. But what I ended up getting was a 10-month sentence from that point on. At that point on, I felt like something in my heart changed. The Lord changed my heart. I knew from the very beginning that I was done, absolutely done with any type of drugs or alcohol. I mean, I've had that thought my entire life, but at this point I felt there was something changed inside of me. I knew I just, I'm 36, 37 years old. I knew it's time to make a change and give it my best effort.
Did you feel like, I'm 36, but I feel older than that? I feel run down. I feel haggard.
I felt like about 136.
Oh gosh.
I was tired.
I've heard a lot of people in recovery talk about their story, and there's always just some defining moment that changes a person's heart. And I always say it doesn't matter how they get there, like whether that's through a tragedy in their life, because you always hear the stories of people who've killed someone by accident, whether that was drinking and driving or whatever. But incarceration, there's a lot of journeys to recovery through incarceration. But for you, it sounds like it wasn't the incarceration because you've been there plenty of times. It was more about what was happening to you.
Absolutely. And there's the thought of that I absolutely could have killed somebody that night and to wake up and not even remember. And, that was it was devastating. I never felt that scared before. And I mean, I knew that was the time. And I was kind of like on the fence. I'm either just going to live the rest of my life, however long it may be, in misery, basically, trying to, or just and accept the fact that that's what my life was that's what it was, or put in some serious effort to try to turn things around. So,
right.
And by the grace of God, I was able to get my feet underneath them and the help of a lot of people. I had a wonderful support team, before, I got incarcerated the time before that time, and I said I was out 11 days, and I ended up back in there. I had a parole officer. I mean, one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. She ended up leaving the parole, being a parole officer to go run a men's mission. So I went to prison and come out. And by the time I come out and went to the men's mission I was released to, she was actually the general manager, the manager of the entire place. So it was kind of like the Lord put me back there,
Wow.
With the help of her. And then, she's definitely had a lot of knowledge in mental health and drug addiction and just a general, just wonderful Christian lady. She helped me get my feet on the ground until I was able to.
That's great.
Yeah. So, yeah, I ended up staying there. I went to the mission 2021. At first I became just the house manager, living there.
Well, that's huge, though. You went from like incarcerated to house manager in what period of time?
Well, I was in for, I think, 10 months that time. And then within 2 months of being released, because I come out on parole, within 2 months being released, I was the house manager, I was the driver for the mission, and then they had just started an overnight shelter for the town we was in for people, experiencing, homelessness, with basically no funding. It was just, we threw some cots in a room.
Wow.
And it was winter time, and just trying to help people out, and it grew to something, that was just...
For folks that don't know, in the general area of Asheville, North Carolina, there is a huge homeless population there. It is definitely an issue, and they do have, I think, a protocol in order there that if it's below 35 degrees, something like that, then Code purple. Yeah. So if it's below 35 degrees, like churches and different organizations will open their doors to the homeless to help them not freeze to death. But, I mean, I'm sorry, there needs to be a little bit more going on with that. And now with a hurricane, I can't even imagine.
Me neither. And it started off as a code purple, but that only lasted, a week or two, and then it was every night, 8 at night till 7 in the morning. Anybody comes from the creation of us. The night we opened the door, I was there. And I worked every night I worked. I loved it. It was a huge part of my recovery, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like you had meaning for the first time in your life, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of my greatest feats, to be honest, or accomplishments, is just because we'd have 35 people a night. I mean, we might not have beds for them when we have making spots on the floor, but that right there just absolutely helped me grow exponentially. And in my walking recovery.
That's great.
So
what did recovery look like for you in terms of, did you do meetings? Were you a AANA guy, like all recovery?
All recovery.
All recovery, yeah. That's what we do. Our organization hosts an all recovery meeting every Monday from 6 to 7. That just started 2 weeks ago, and I believe day before yesterday we had 14 people show up, which I thought was pretty phenomenal considering we don't have any. Of course, it's not my meeting. I am not a person in long-term recovery, but our peer support folks host that, and I'm impressed with the outreach that they've gotten through just social media to get 14 people in a meeting in 2 weeks.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful for everybody there. I mean,
right.
Meetings are very important.
What's the difference? So I'm taking you off track a little bit, but what's the difference for meetings from like an AANA run meeting versus an all recovery meeting?
Maybe just the focal point of it, I guess. I mean, I know people go to AA. It's basically they don't like to talk about NA, and people in NA, they don't want to bring in AA. So it's, I guess, all recovery would just be all recovery.
Every kind of recovery.
Whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you. Yeah, I like that. It sounds like there's, I've heard from some of my clients that there's a lot of rules around AA and NA, and I just feel like I understand there needs to be some foundational things in place, but it seems like all recovery just is very welcoming of all folks.
Absolutely.
And their story and their walks of life, and I like that concept a lot. And I'm certainly not, please, I don't want to get an email from someone that says, oh, she put down AA or NA. I'm definitely not doing that. I think all walks of recovery have a place, and certainly I know many, many people, and I even have family members that go to AA. So please understand that I'm not putting, I always have to put the disclaimer out, I'm not putting down anyone. All recovery is great. And when I say all recovery, I mean all kinds of recovery.
Yes, absolutely. Whatever works for you.
Whatever works. That's right.
Absolutely. So I enjoy any type of recovery meeting, any type of training, I'm just constantly looking for the next little bit of information just to help me in my growth. I mean, I was in the way my situation worked out, just living at the men's center, being the house manager, and then I ended up wanting to get my peer support. I did that. Being the driver, like my position guys would come to me, and and it kind of made me hold myself to a higher standard.
Well, it's holding you accountable, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're a person of power in this space where you're the driver and you're the house manager, and now you have an important role in the lives of others. And I mean, that's a huge place to be.
Absolutely. And I took it, very serious, very important to me. And it helped me. I mean, it helped me in my growth until guys would come to me for, advice. And in my mind, I'm like, why are they asking me? Because I wasn't even there yet.
Have you heard like the term internalized stigma? So it's something that we talk about in my organization with our peer support specialists, that they don't see value in themselves because they have been taught through incarceration and all the things that have happened to them that they are a person that's less than in society. And that's the internalized stigma that they walk with every single day. So they're always seeking permission. They're always not actively seeing the great work that they're doing, because they still go back to that place where they feel like they're a less than individual. So I'm constantly trying to, with my teammates, letting them know that they are just as valuable as our doctor, just as valuable as me, that they bring an experience to the table that we cannot understand, that we cannot walk that walk and live that life because we didn't come through that. So the experience that you guys are bringing to the table, the lived experience, that's the best experience. That's what heals others with the same pathway.
The beauty of peer support.
That's right. It's such a big deal. I was talking with Todd Davidson this morning, Big Toddzilla on I think Instagram and TikTok, but he's been on the podcast, and he's one of our peer support specialists. But I'm just going to give a little shout out because I wrote to the National RX Drug Summit. I wrote a poster presentation for our jail in-reach recovery and reentry success plan, which we're actively doing in rural jails right now. But it was chosen to, I was chosen to be a presenter at this, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to be the one to present this, even though I wrote it and we are doing it. I need the person who's actually in the jail doing the in-reach. So I chose Todd to present that in Nashville in April 2025. And of course, we'll all go as a team and support Todd. But even though I wrote it, he's going to be the one to present it because he's actively in there doing it, right? And so when I see him doing what you're doing with that internalized stigma where you don't understand why people are coming to you, he feels the same way. And I always say you need to back up and remember you got to be here because you walk the walk, you talk the talk, and you're living that life to be that person. Every piece of what you went through is how you got where you are today. And that's the same with you, John, So that takes me back to where you were just at. And I'm sorry I got off on a tangent, but that internalized stigma piece that we were just talking about is what you were speaking about when you said, I don't understand why these people are coming to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're the house manager, so that's who they're looking to for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It just started, that was at the very beginning of, my walk of recovery. So it was just an odd feeling, but that internalized stigma, that is absolutely real. It's a real thing. When you're in active addiction so long, you don't even know how to process feelings, right? As you're walking sober, your brain has to learn to function normally
without drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. So something as far as just being nervous to a normal person be overwhelming to somebody who been walking through life just numb to everything. It definitely takes a lot. The road to recovery is not an easy one, but it is absolutely worth it and wonderful.
And I think about you specifically being so young at 13, 14 years old when you started using. Your brain didn't develop yet. So as your brain developed, it developed on drugs and alcohol. So you specifically have had a different relearning process because you're actually having to retrain your brain to develop adult feelings not childhood feelings, without the drugs and alcohol to help you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's huge.
It's a process. It's definitely been a process. I'm still every day working on it. So, I had a lady tell me one day, when I was active in heroin addiction, she told me, she said, you're just using drugs every day. You're basically, you're robbing yourself of happiness for when you come off of it. Like, your body's dumping so much dopamine or whatever in it by using it. When you come off of it, you're robbing yourself of your own happiness. Like,
yeah.
Which is true. Like, for an extent, but there's definitely ways to crank up them dopamine receptors, as a sober.
A really good example of how to have good dopamine experience is, sorry for our listeners if this offends you, but sex is a good way to have dopamine as well as exercise. Like, those are two really prime examples of healthy ways to engage in legal dopamine activity. So there's that, laughter, music. I'm a huge advocate of happiness through music. Music is like my thing.
I love music. Absolutely.
So, I that's where every day if I do go to the office, that's my jam. Like, I'm all over like every kind of music, and I don't just get into one kind of music. I like all music.
Me too.
That's cool.
Me too.
So okay, another tangent I just got off on. So, but I thought it was important to talk about how to get dopamine without drugs, right? Like,
absolutely.
And that you brought up a very relevant fact that you're robbing the brain's real way to produce dopamine by doing it through drugs.
Yes, absolutely.
And the brain has to relearn that. Brain's smart. Brain will lie to you all day.
Yeah, that just always resonated with me. What that woman said to me, I still think about it quite a bit. But yeah, so going through that mission, that I stayed there 2 years actually, and then until I moved, but I stayed on working with that mission. I was able to get my peer support.
Okay, so you did peer support. So I did a Did You Know about that in the last episode, about what peer support does and what it brings to the community. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means to you?
Basically, just through my lived experience, being able to meet people where they are, and for me, being all over the ladder of drug addiction, I've been in the worst of ways. I don't know if it's gifted from the Lord or what it is, but I can resonate with people and just feel them, understand where they're at, and then try to use my little bit of knowledge I have to help get them into the, bridge the gap from whatever, wherever they're trying to get from where they're at to where they're going. So, I actually became the street outreach coordinator in McDowell County up there. So I was able to. Oh,
gosh, that's huge.
It was wonderful.
Tell me about street outreach.
Basically, we just did harm reduction. We went out to the campsites, interacted with people, just bring some stuff out, whatever may help them, tents.
When you say campsites, is that homeless?
Yeah, homeless, yeah.
Yeah, that's sad.
There's a bunch of them up there. To be a small rural town, it's unbelievable how many people, suffering from, houselessness.
Houselessness, guys, that's a thing. That means not just homeless, houselessness. I like that. I'm going to start using that.
It's real. It's a lot of it up there. So when I got into that position, was able to just go out and meet people where they were, load up the vehicles with, whether it be water or a Narcan or sleeping bag. In the wintertime, it gets cold up there in the mountains, and there's a lot of people
it does.
that don't have the necessary things that, to make it through.
How are you getting access to Narcan?
Up there, we I'm not sure our organization would, I think, purchase it.
That's sad because Narcan's expensive.
Yeah.
I had someone write me on the podcast on TikTok, and I had said, did you know that Narcan's like $83? And a person wrote back, it's free. And I thought, if it was free to you, it was through a grant. It's not free. I'm sorry. It's not. And we do give it out for free, but that's because we have grants. So the average person, unless you happen to be so lucky to being a grant-funded recipient of Narcan, I'm sorry, it's not free.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
And then it's absolutely necessary.
It's very necessary.
I got Narcan in all my
you're,
car.
You're the living, breathing truth of that Narcan works.
Absolutely.
Because you're here today because Narcan works.
Yeah. If I want to go back just a little bit, in 2018, like, my mother finally, met her and she overdosed. Just a mixture of drugs in 2018.
So sorry.
And then shortly after that, one of my sisters, they overdosed 2019. My oldest little sister, she overdosed and died in 2019. And then, like, overdose is just, I took out a huge majority of my family. All my aunts, I have 3 aunts that's overdosed. Out of them 3, 3 of their children has overdosed. Like, so, and then my mother, my father, and my oldest little sister, she overdosed. Like, in 2019, she was 30. My mom was 56. My dad was 30 and 96. So
I'm counting how many family members you've lost to overdose. I think you're at like 8.
It's been at least 8. It's been
that
at least 8.
That is such a tragedy.
If Narcan had been around, or it's a lifesaver. It's absolutely a lifesaver. I think everybody should carry it if they get a chance to get their hands on it.
Narcan is, by the way, to our listeners, Narcan's the brand name of naloxone. It does come in other brands. That is just the most prevalent brand that is accessible to the public at this time. And as John stated, if that had been available, he might not have lost 8 to 9 members of his family, and he wouldn't be here today. So I feel really proud to say that yesterday we got our overdose reversal kit hung inside of the Healthy Georgia office. And we took a picture with the team that brought it, which was John Langston from the Georgia Council for Recovery. He brought it and hung it. And the local McDonald's put one in as well. And I was just so proud of the McDonald's, because there's such a stigma that goes along with hanging these Nalox boxes inside of businesses. People don't want to really admit that we have the problem, that everyone needs an Nalox box in their business. I've had doctors' offices tell me, we don't see that in our office. Oh, okay, you don't see that in your office, okay. So that means you're not asking the questions. Because, yeah, you're seeing it. You just didn't know you were seeing it. So I think that we, going into late 2024, moving soon into 2025, you're talking about how many years ago was that your last family member would have overdosed?
The last one, my sister, was 2019.
And then you were saved by Narcan around that same time?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're just talking about a 4-year time frame here of access to Narcan that can make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
So that'll probably be I'll probably do a Did You Know about that next episode. We'll do a Narcan and maybe throw out some data, or I might even do it on a short sesh. But I think it's so important. So, all right, back to your story. So now you are where? Where are we?
So I guess at the Mission, I was at the Mission. I worked there for right at 3 years.
Okay.
We did a little bit of everything, just a small organization. But, I mean,
the street mission that you're doing, I think, was huge.
It's absolutely wonderful. One of the best jobs I could ever hope to have. So
how many years clean are you right now?
A little more than 4.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, from drugs and alcohol. Like, the last that I had alcohol was November 30th, 21. But I didn't do any drugs since I went into that time where I couldn't remember everything. Like, that was the last time I touched any type of substance. Like,
that's great.
Yeah, it shocked me straight.
Alcohol's a hard one, I think, because it's just everywhere you go and it's so easily accessible. And, you have family members that are probably drinking in your presence, and there it's right in your face. And, I just feel that in the treatment of my patients, I have found that is the one drug that seems to be the hardest, because it is just right in your face everywhere you go. Restaurants, grocery stores, commercials, football, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Till you have an experience like mine, and I mean, like, to wake up and not know, how I got into the state I was in jail. I mean, it was my entire life, even if I was in a jail or wherever, and I would say I'm not going to use alcohol, I'm done with it. I always knew in the back of my mind that I was going to, like, no matter how much I could trick myself to think that I was not. But at this point, something switched in my mind, and it's like completely turned the switch. And that's why I say the Lord changed my heart, or, just alcohol, just the thought of it, like, it's removed from me, like the
That's
Lord
great.
Jesus himself did it.
That's so cool. I know a lot of folks that are clean today are extremely religious. I also have some that aren't. But, I think it just depends on the path, how you got there. And I feel like it fits through religion, incarceration, both, any type of meeting, NA, AA, all recovery, whatever that path looks like for you, it's all good.
If it's working, just keep whatever works. Just keep doing that. That's what a friend of mine told me. Whatever's working for you, just keep on doing that. So that's what I try to do. It's all of it. It's any type of recovery, information or group or praying. Some self meditating, just whatever, just to keep me.
Do you work with a lot of like, I don't know, like gratitude work where you're just grateful for where you are today and what you have?
Absolutely, but I need to be more grateful because I'm blessed. I truly am to be where I'm at. I mean, my entire family just one after the other dying from overdoses, and then just still in the struggle, just still caught up in it. For me to be able to step out of that, like you said, a lot of people in meth addiction, they think it's hard, extremely hard to get out of, which it absolutely is. But to be a heroin addict, meth, cocaine, alcoholism, and multiple incarcerations,
right?
Like that's why I truly believe that my heart was changed, because it's just not that dark no more. You gotta have a dark heart, kind of to walk through the paths of life that you have to in order to maintain that type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not.
Do you use humor at all?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of jokes. Like I think Ashley York said on episode, I can't remember which guest she was. I think one of our second people at the podcast, but she said, I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs.
That's I know that joke.
And that's so true, and probably pretty common amongst folks that are in long-term recovery.
Yeah.
But,
laughing, humor is my medicine. Like I got my 6-month-old boy. I can't even look at him without him laughing. Like he's we got a happy family right now.
That's so good. I love that. You have a beautiful family. And I'm proud to have you on the show, and proud for you to be able to tell your story to recovery and what that looked like. And I think you're one of the only ones that we've had on the show that had a long span of recovery that looks like longer than what you have right now.
Yeah.
So to point out, you had a 7-year span of recovery and a relapse due to a tragedy. So, I think that tragedy, it sounds like it took you down the rabbit hole. And
it did, absolutely.
And took you back to a dark place. But it does sound like this time is different because you had an overdose and a blackout in 48 hours that changed your life.
Absolutely. And then, a lot of people, even if they're in recovery and, they fall back into addiction, they think that it's like they have to completely restart from the beginning, and that's not the way it works.
I just told a person that actually Todd used Kratom after he was clean for, I can't remember. So he doesn't use, even though Kratom, guys, you've heard me talk about it for our listeners on my short sesh and maybe in another episode, but that's a gas station synthetic opioid that's sold inappropriately for mood and anxiety and different things. You have to be really careful with those gas station drugs. But anyway, going back to Todd, he used that not knowing what it was. And so he does not use his original clean date for that reason. he uses the day after he uses the kratom. So he's really got quite a longer, to me, clean day. I don't even count his kratom because he didn't even know, right? Like, so at the end of the day, he didn't know what he was doing. And that's one of the short sessions that I just did, was letting our listeners know that if you get your CBD in a gas station, or you use kratom or the tianeptine or any of that stuff that's sold in there, that it can cause you to test positive, especially if you're in drug court, right? Like, and you inappropriately but also not knowingly use a gas station product, they can end up going back to jail.
And you will test positive for using them. Absolutely shows up for THC, those THC pens, like. And
they're selling them. They're selling them around here now, and I'm like, how are they getting by that? I guess it's because there's just no regulation of it. I don't understand it. I got to educate my own self on how the THC pens are being sold in non-legal marijuana states, like Georgia.
Yeah, I don't understand it myself.
So I don't know. And then I recently found out that the casino over in Cherokee has a marijuana farm, and that they are selling marijuana on the reservation now in bulk. So if you get pulled over leaving the reservation, you could be charged with intent to sell, because they don't regulate how much you can buy.
Wow.
So there's that, so I mean, it's just like, I don't know what I think about that, because I know some people use marijuana like medicinally, which is probably better maybe than some type of antidepressant. Like I'm on the fence there. So I'm trying to say, so for our listeners, I'm not saying I'm a proponent of marijuana usage for depression. So there's no need to write an email about that. But I am just saying that there is some proof in the pudding that can be used for pain and other things if you don't have a issue with addiction. So I don't know. It's just kind of like a catch-22 that now that it's really very accessible and being sold in large quantities, and to me that opens the door for people to traffic it, I guess.
Yeah, the pens itself, like they can be dangerous. Like I've personally, in two different experiences, I was with people that was using them, and it absolutely did something to their mental health. Yeah,
because it's not dosed in any particular dosage. So if you were smoking, say, a joint, it's my understanding that if you vape the same product, it's going to hit the cannabinoid receptor in your brain in a different way, and a much more concentrated way, which can cause a cannabinoid overdose, which with joint usage usually would not happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They can be dangerous. They're definitely not. I mean, they're not just safe because they sell them in the gas stations. I've had to personally help two men to the hospital due to their mental health. Guys I've known for long periods of time use those THC pens, and it sent them.
Yeah, I had a scary experience in a local partner's doctor's office who treats addiction and depression, but he's like a regular physician's practice, but he also works a specialty practice for addiction. And I happened to be in the office at the time, and one of the nurse practitioners came in terrified because they had a 16-year-old girl with stroke-like activity. We had to fly her out, and the only thing she would admit to was having smoked a THC pen at school. And she was 16, and no prior drug usage to the knowledge of the family, but had taken a couple of hits off a friend's THC pen. So for October is Substance Use Prevention Month, and we actually put flyers out to schools about vaping for youth, because it is such a scary thing for our kids. And the parents, they have no earthly idea if their kids are vaping or not, because that is just a handy little thing that looks like a key fob and looks cute and pretty, and it's pink, and might get passed over really easily in son or daughter's pocket, so on and so forth. So scary times for kids.
In 2018, I actually had one of my little cousins. He was 21 years old. He smoked a synthetic flower, and it killed him. It did something to his heart. I'm not sure exactly what it did to his heart.
So what synthetic product?
Like K2.
Oh, yeah.
They
Okay.
killed him at 21 years old, like young, healthy, and had nothing wrong with him, you know, health-wise. And I don't know if he did too much or what, but he was 21 and he smoked it and it killed him.
I'm so sorry. Gosh, we're up to like 9, 10 folks in your catchment. Actually, in the people that you know, not just family members, you've probably lost how many, if you had to just guess how many people in your life you've lost to overdose?
At least 25 at least.
That's just, I hope that you take care of yourself, and you get grief coping counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd speak to somebody.
I'm a very big proponent of therapy. I always say on the podcast that, you know, not everyone needs therapy all the time, but everyone needs therapy some of the time.
Absolutely. It's wonderful for helping you heal from stuff you might not even realize you got going on.
That's right.
It's helped me. So,
John, any final words that you want to say from today and where you are today? And because we're going to wrap up today's episode 2 of John Malley. I'm just grateful to be on the show and just tell my story. I wish I could have told it a little more straightforward. I don't think anybody's story is straightforward. If I tried to talk about my youth from age 5 to 7 to today, I wouldn't be able to tell it. So I think you did a beautiful job. Thank you. I appreciate you being on the show, and you can always come back. And if you think of things, and this is to anyone that's been on the show or anyone who wants to be on the show, you can write me at clearlywellpodcast@gmail.com and catch us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and check us out. Follow us, like us, give us your feedback. We appreciate it. And John, we really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Big shout out to Talking Trash Podcast, Tim Schneider. Thank you, Tim and John Oxley, for always following me and giving me hearts on TikTok. And I can't wait to be on your show. Anyway, thanks, guys. So as I wrap up today's introductory podcast, I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearlywell is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.